Hello, this is the first lesson in the seventh fetter, and you might find that the seventh fetter will for you be the most important fetter. The seventh fetter is kind of an add-on. It's one that makes everything else very, very clear. I really think you're going to enjoy the seventh fetter. In the Samyana Sutta, where all the fetters are from, the seventh fetter is translated in different ways. It's called form in the formless. It's called desire for the formless, craving for the formless. I have translated it into something out of nothing, because that is what it is. If you take the first fetter, the identification with an I, identification with thought as we do it, then you see how much is actually thought. The majority of your day is about thought. You're living in your mind. You're not living in reality. You're not noticing what is actually here happening around you. When somebody speaks, you're not really listening. You listen to what you think they say. And then you create small stories about what you think they say. And that is what you're reacting to. All that reacting to, all that creating small stories, that is the seventh fetter. That is something out of nothing. So imagine this, there is absolutely nothing. There's nothing. There's just being. There's an open space. We do not know what that open space is. We do not know any of that. We just know that when you let everything drop, there's just an open space. And if you should say any sense connected to it, then it's like a very, very deep feeling of stillness, simplicity, and contentment. And that stillness, that silence, is a really good indication of everything else have just dropped. The moment you start to add something onto that, it's the seventh fetter. You might hear the birds in the background. If you're an ornithologist, you might be able to tell me which birds it is. But if you let go of that, it's just sounds. In the herd, there's simply the herd. It's just sounds. Everything you add on to that, it's a bird, it's a car, it's a dog. That is something out of nothing. I am hearing a sound. That is something out of nothing. So if you just slowly look around in the room that you're in, breathe. Let your eyes fall on what they fall on. Let the sounds come in. Let the smell and taste be as it is. Do you see how much something out of nothing you're creating? You cannot see a single thing without the mind immediately creating something out of nothing. And you sixth fetter, place yourself here, looking at that out there. You four fetter it and five fetter it with all the things you like and don't like. It might remind you of some things, so it's second fetter feelings and emotions. You might look at the neighbor right now. He reminds you of your dad. That is second fetter. So the something out of nothing is kind of like an add-on to all the other feathers. And now when you start to work with seventh fetter, I would like for you really to slow down and zoom in. And if you don't know yet where you are in the feathers, it doesn't really matter. Just notice how much right now you just created something out of nothing. So the way we're going to do it is, we have the lesson today where I walk you through all the different feathers and how the seventh feather is shaping the perception of those, the identification, the assumption of those feathers. And then there will be 5 inquiries for the lower 5s, where we are going more into depth with it, and where I would like for you to really, for example, next week, when it's the inquiry about the first fetter and the something out of nothing with thought, I would like for you to take the full week and really, really dive into it. Really, really notice how much something out of nothing you're creating with your thoughts. The week after is going to be about feeling and emotions. Take the full week to really notice how much something out of nothing you're creating with feelings, fear, anger, guilt, and shame. Your feelings about what you think you feel. The week after that is the third fetter, about habits. All the things we do for a purpose. How much purpose is actually something out of nothing? Then it's the fourth and the fifth. And then we're going to have like a break where Todd and I, where we are going to do a sofa set and talk about the seventh feather before we move on to the higher 5s. So in this lesson today, I would like to really tell you about how the something out of nothing is a part of all the feathers. So let's start with the first feather. The first feather is about the identification with an I. I am here. The question that we raise in the first fetter is, who am I? If you look at this something out of nothing with that is enough for you to really pause in your track. In many ways, when you look into the first fetter and an identification with an I, and you pose the question, how much of this is something out of nothing? A lot of it can drop. Awakening can happen right then. There is no I. All the things in your thoughts is something out of nothing. It's removing you from right now. What is present right now is just what is happening in your sensory experiences, in your seeing, in your smelling, your hearing, your tasting, your touching. And that is a direct experience of something right now, where nothing is added onto it. It's just a very, very pure seeing. The eyes are looking out. You have a meat suit. The eyes are looking out and you see. Anything else you add onto that is something out of nothing. How do you know that it is a house? How do you know there is a house out there? That's the sex fetter. So how much in thought are you creating something out of nothing? Can you even have a thought without it being something out of nothing? In the moment right now, there's just this. And we don't even know what that is. I really understand it when we hear those stories about Eckhart Tolle sitting on a bench for 2 years. Really, really understanding that there is no I. There's no one observing anything. Anything you think that is observed is a thought, something out of nothing. Can you even have a thought that is about now? Of course you can't. All your thoughts are future projections about things you will like, or past projections of what you think happened in the past. It's something out of nothing. really see if you can find any thoughts that are real, that are not something out of nothing. Really look into it for yourself. The second fetter is when we identify with our feelings and emotions. And in the second fetter material, it's really, really a tough material. It really is. All the lessons in the curriculum in the second fetter, they're really, really tough. It's about the emotional indicators of fear, anger, guilt, and shame. So before you work with the seventh fetter, I would like for you really to be in depth with the second fetter material. That you really have looked into all the feelings and emotions that you experience of fear, anger, guilt, and shame. I don't want you to bypass in any way. I really would like for you to, when an emotion of fear, anger, guilt, and shame is happening, that you allow it to be there. That you do not fight it in any way. And when you're ready, then you add the seventh fetter of something out of nothing. So when you feel anger, that is something out of nothing. Anger does not exist. It is a feeling that is arising. And like we talked about in the second fetter, it's a sensory experience in the body that we have added a thought to. And that then becomes anger. So the reaction of anger is so far down the line of identification. It is very, very clearly something out of nothing. And if you really believe that somebody can make you angry, or something, tax bill that you get that you didn't know that was going to come, and you really, really get angry about that, that is something out of nothing. Now, if it doesn't really compute yet, go back to the second fetter and work with it. All the things that you need to create space for, promise me that you do that. Promise me that you do the work, that you do not bypass in any way. It's so easy to bypass, but who is gonna, gain anything from that? If there's pain in you that needs space, so do that. And then go back to the second fetter and work with all the feelings and emotions, and look at it from the fifth floor view, where you look at it and you really see that, wow, all that is something out of nothing. You can take the full week when we have the inquiry for the first fetter, second fetter, third, fourth, and fifth fetter. Take the full week where you revisit the curriculum and all the lessons in that week, in the second fetter that we're talking about now. Look at it. See if there's something more that needs to be resolved in you, that needs to be created space for in you. And if not, listen to all the lessons with the knowledge of something out of nothing. I assure you, it will become very, very clear. All of that, all of the feelings and emotions that you think are there, are not. There is a purity in the moment when you release first fetter thoughts and second fetter feeling and emotions. You see very, very clearly everything that you have created something out of nothing about. And in the third fetter, it's about habits. It's about that you have certain things that you do every single day for a purpose. You believe that you exercise to stay healthy or to lose weight. You eat certain things to lose weight, to stay healthy for something. There's a reason, there's a purpose in what you're doing. You stay in the job that you hate because you need, food on the table. All of those things that you do in your everyday life with a purpose. is something out of nothing. And again, when we come to the third week where you're working with the inquiry of habits of the third fetter, spend the week where you revisit all the material and really look into your life of how many things you do for a purpose. And that purpose is something out of nothing. In this moment, there is just this. There's a difference in getting up and eating because it's lunchtime. That is the habit. I need to eat. I'm eating that because it's good for me. That's one way of seeing it. The other way of seeing it is where in the meat suit, hunger is happening. And you get up, you go to the fridge, and you take out what you can feel will satiate that hunger right now. Then there's nothing more in it. It's just hunger is happening. Eating is happening. There's a 9 fetter flow in it where it's just happening. And really becoming aware of all those 10 different points that we listed in the third fetter. All the things that is the self-care for the non-self. All those can happen with you having an awareness about something out of nothing. When you remove that something, you enter the 9th fetter flow, and the 3rd fetter and the 9th fetter, they're pairs. So when you start to be in life and you move with self-care for the non-self, then there's no longer something out of nothing in it. The 4th fetter is about cravings. It's all the things that you want. And when the week comes where you're working with the inquiry, something out of nothing, with all the things that you want, I would like for you to revisit the material. Really look into that delusion you have of there being something else than what is right now. The 4th fetter is very much about us thinking that what is right now is not the way we want it. 5th fetter is not the way we want it. We want something else. That is what I want. If only Janice had not said that, then I would be really, really happy. So I would like a life where things are that way, as if that's possible. The 4th fetter can only exist if you create something out of nothing. When you really remove yourself from what is right now and believe that there's an alternative, and that alternative would make everything so much better. There is no alternative. There is just this right now. And whenever you, with 4th fetter craving, make something out of nothing, things that you want differently than what is, you're removing yourself from right now. Right now, in this moment, there's nothing that needs to be better. There's nothing that needs to be removed for this moment to be any better. This moment is exactly like it's supposed to be. You are exactly like you're supposed to be. There's nothing that needs to be any different. And if you believe so, you're creating something out of nothing. And the 5th fetter, aversion. Aversion is something out of nothing. Ill will is something out of nothing. Irritation, annoyance, envy, resentment. All that is something out of nothing. When you think that Janice shouldn't be the way that she is, when your mom shouldn't react like she does, when your dad shouldn't have done what he did, all that is something out of nothing. And the 5th fetter is really, really difficult and complicated and hard, because it's also where we really look into the bubble of reality. So when that week comes and we do the inquiry in the 5th fetter and the 7th fetter, something out of nothing, I really would like for you to be gentle with yourself. It is a really, really tough fetter. In the bubble of reality, You become aware of everything you think, you hear, everything you think you see, you smell, you touch. Everything that you think is in a certain way, you find out that it's not. You find out that that is just a reflection of your experiences, of your past. There's nothing else than what you think is. And what you think is based on your bullshit backpack. Everything you have carried with you your entire life. So if somebody is being cruel towards someone else, if you react on that cruelty, it's a reflection of you. If you do not react on that cruelty, it's a reflection of you. It can't be anything else. It can only be that. So I'm not saying, when we talk about the bubble of reality, that you shouldn't help weak people, somebody's kicking a dog. We're not saying that you shouldn't help the dog, that you shouldn't stop the situation. We're not saying that you see a flame igniting in a house and you just go like, well, I would react to that. Now I'm not. So the house burns down. It's not what we're saying. When we talk about the bubble of reality, we just want you to become aware that everything is just a reflection of your truth. Whatever you believe that truth to be. There's nothing wrong with that. We just want you to become aware of that identification is there all the time. When somebody says something, what you think you hear they say is a reflection of you. So somebody can be taking advantage of you and you never knew. That is a reflection of you. Somebody cannot be taking advantage of you and you think they are. That is a reflection of you. And all that is something out of nothing. The entire bubble of reality is something out of nothing. So in the fifth fetter, it's really about slowing down, zooming in and noticing that all your aversions, all your ill will, all your envy and resentment, irritation and annoyance, it's something out of nothing. There's nothing there. There's just this moment. And it doesn't mean that you're supposed to be a doormat. If that is what you hear, you're welcome. You just created something out of nothing. So happy I could help. It's really that knowing that there's nothing wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just becoming aware of all the identification that is happening. And putting you in a place where there's nobody forcing you to do anything. You're not forcing you to do anything or not do anything. You're alive with what is alive in this moment. And what is alive in this moment is what is alive. It's a part where we can't use words to describe it. After the fifth fetter, after you've done the lower fives, Todd and I, we're going to do a sofa sit where we talk about the seventh fetter. And then there will be more increase going on for the higher fives. In the sixth fetter, it's the subject-object. It's where you sit right here, you look out the window, and you notice something outside of the window. In the sixth fetter, we work with that subject that you perceive is here, and the object that you perceive is out there. That object is actually in here. It's the brain that is perceiving it. So it is at zero distance. And we did the other exercises where you sit and you look out, and then you kind of go into the object and look back. And you see that there's no one. There's not a perceiver. Now, the seventh fetter is dissolving perceiving. Because if there's not a subject here observing an object out there, there's not a perceiver, then there can't be perceiving. So when you work with the inquiry for the sixth fetter, everything is dissolved. There's not a subject here or an object out there. There's not a perceiver perceiving. All that is dissolved. In the eighth fetter, when we look into the something out of nothing, the eighth fetter is... Do you remember in the first fetter when we asked the question, who am I? The question in the eighth fetter is, am I? And if you previously have been working with Neo, Advaita Vedanta, or you've been working with Rupert Spira, or you've been working with any kind of New Age spirituality, if you come from any kind of religious background, then you know that the big thing is about that it's not the question that we pose with am I? It's the I am. So I am the universe. I am God. I am part of everything. So there's not a little I, there's a big I. Do you see that something out of nothing? If there's no one here, a little I, there can't be a big I, can there? And it's why I very often do not want to talk about the eighth fetter, because a lot of people, they're living in a world full of rainbows and unicorns. That is something out of nothing. And I don't like being the one putting a needle into the balloon. But when you really, really look at it, if you hear any of those videos, it's great for when you work with the week where you're dissolving the eighth fetter out, something out of nothing. It's great to listen to those videos where you hear somebody saying, it's awareness being aware. That is something out of nothing, isn't it? How can awareness be aware? If there's no one, then there's not awareness. Like we just said with sixth fetter. If there's not a perceiver, how can there be perceiving? That's something out of nothing. But the eighth fetter is very much about creating a foundation to stand on. So it's just an extension of the first fetter, of believing that there's someone that needs to stand somewhere. It's something out of nothing. The eighth fetter is a beautiful place to be, and you're gonna see that we're not creating much material for the eighth fetter, because I like people to stay there. You know, after all the workings that you have done with the other fetters, the eighth fetter is a really nice place to stay and have a breather, creating something out of nothing for a while. But yeah, when you're working with the eighth fetter, and when you work with the inquiry for the eighth fetter, look into how much something out of nothing you're creating. Can you be in a body where there's nothing? There's not even anyone that can be anywhere. Everything is dissolved. And that is leading to the ninth fetter. Ninth fetter is paired with the third fetter, as I said. And I usually talk about the ninth fetter as flow. In the Samyana Sutta, it's mentioned as restlessness. It's translated into restlessness. And when you know that the eighth fetter has fallen, and there's not an I anywhere, not even a big one, not a big one or a small one. We're not even, concerned about capital letters anymore. Then a restlessness can happen. And that restlessness is something out of nothing. There's just flow. There's a meat suit that needs to go to the bathroom, off you go. There's sensations arising. But if you really close your eyes and you really, really breathe into it, you cannot even locate those sensations. That can activate a restlessness. And that restlessness is something out of nothing. It is a grasping for something to be solid. That there is a restlessness that can force Fetter be in a not be there anymore. So there's another reality where the restlessness is not there. Something out of nothing. And it leads us to the 10th fetter. The 10th fetter is called the wisdom. We call it the wisdom. It's where you really, really become aware how ignorant you are. We all are. Whatever you perceive in your little bubble is only something you have picked up from your story. All that story is something out of nothing. And everything you think you know is something out of nothing. There's so much beyond what you do not know. So really, really becoming aware of your ignorance is the 10th fetter. And ignorance is something out of nothing, just like wisdom is something out of nothing. Now you probably noticed that I skipped the 7th fetter. And it's because in the 7th fetter, what we work with there is the big something out of nothing that we are creating. And that's about time. So one of the lessons that you're going to have is an inquiry, an exercise where we time travel, where we dissolve time. If there's only this moment right now, then there's not a past. The past is not here anywhere. The past is what we label our memories, but our memories are false. You do not remember who you were in the beginning when you started to listen to this lesson. Who you were, how you perceived the world, you have forgotten. The way that you viewed yourself and everyone else, you have forgotten. And you're not even aware that you have forgotten. Because it's kind of like you're kicking reboot all the time. And that rebooting that is taking place is changing you all the time. The idea that you have of time is a delusion. There's not a past and there's not a future. There's not even an understanding of that, because that would be creating something out of nothing. And since the past is not happening and the future is not happening, it's just a thought, then you can travel into the past and you can heal experiences that you think you had in the past. The past is happening right now in your thoughts. It's not anywhere else. So the idea of time is something out of nothing. And there will be an inquiry where we dissolve even that. So that was it, my friend. First lesson in the 7th fetter. It's a big one. But it will be so helpful for you to dissolve all the identification that you have with everything. Just really notice how much something out of nothing that you're creating. Thank you.